Welcome to the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast, where you learn the best doubles lessons to improve your game and win more matches while getting to know some of the top doubles players and coaches on the planet. I'm your host, Will Bochek. This podcast, my weekly strategy newsletter, and my website all focus on the goal of better understanding the sport of doubles and helping players like you improve faster through actionable advice that you can use in your very next match. My goal is to provide the best doubles resources in the world. And to do that, I study, analyze, and work with players at every level of the game, all the way up to the ATP and WTA tours. If you enjoy this podcast, consider becoming a Tennis Tribe member to go even deeper and take your doubles IQ to the next level. Members get access to premium podcast episodes, weekly video lessons, monthly strategy webinars, courses, ebooks, gear discounts, and a lot more. Go to thetennistribe.com/memberships to see all the benefits and sign up. Here's today's episode. Hey everyone, welcome to the show. Today we're going to do a deep dive on returns. This is a topic I have not covered in a while. I've definitely talked about it on the podcast before, but it has certainly been a long time. And I'm going to answer some of your questions surrounding returns. So most of these are member-related questions. So this is going to be a member AMA podcast similar to last week. I actually had a WTA player scheduled for an interview, and she had to bail because her Wi-Fi at her hotel was a little bit shaky. So I'm going to try to set that up soon. So hopefully y'all can hear from her as well. But let's dive into returns. So what I'm going to cover is 6 different topics related to returns. Number one, I'm going to talk about just kind of my general philosophy with returns when it comes to doubles. So I'm going to talk about how to improve your returns, some of the keys to focus on for your returns, and a lot more. And then after that, I'm going to talk about consistency. So one of the questions is around being a more consistent returner and cutting down on errors and being a more reliable returner. After that, we'll talk about backhand returns from both the deuce and the ad court. And then we'll dive into the member section where I'll talk about handling variety. So flat serves, spin serves, kick serves, weak serves. So a lot of you probably faced weak second serves. What should we do with those? How do we handle the guys serve in mixed doubles if you're not used to a really powerful flat serve? What should you do about that? So I'm going to talk about all of those topics. I'm going to talk about how to cut down on your return errors. And then at the end, I'm going to give the members a practice plan for your returns. It is going to be a specific plan with dedicated time to working on your returns, whether it's from the deuce or ad court, and where I like to set up my targets. Before we dive into all these questions, a couple of quick announcements. So I've just opened up registration for several doubles camps. The first one is in DFW, so it's in Fort Worth, near Dallas, not too far from where I live. It's going to be the same location that we had it in April, which was a huge success. So I'm going to do that again August 15th and 16th. I'm going to link to it in the show notes so you can check it out there. But if you live in the DFW area or if you want to fly in April, we had I think 6 of the 8 people fly in from New York and Phoenix and Seattle, all over the country. We're going to spend 8 hours on court together. We're going to do an hour strategy presentation. We're going to have lunch together. I'm going to try to set up a happy hour as well, so that everybody can meet, and it should be a ton of fun. You're going to learn a lot. We're going to play tennis, but we're more importantly going to change your doubles game. We're going to change the tactics you use and your mindset on the court, and give you some specific drills to continue to level up and improve. So with all of these camps, the things I'm really focused on most is results. I consistently get emails after camps from people who tell me, we faced a team that had beaten us the last 4 times, and we happened to win using some of your tactics. So that is the thing that I'm looking for out of these camps. I want you to beat players and teams that you're not currently beating today. We're going to be in New York as well, so I'm going to go to the US Open this year, and we're going to have a camp September 3rd and 4th with add-in like I've done the last 3 years, so I'll link to that as well. It's also 8 hours on the court, 1 hour strategy presentation, and lunch included. And then, of course, the rally trip, September 4th through 7th over Labor Day weekend. That is a full tennis experience. We're going to play tennis every morning. Your hotel is included in the cost of the trip. And then we're going to go to the US Open as a group together, and you'll be able to sit next to me while I analyze the doubles matches for you. We have happy hour set up, a few meals, guest speakers, and a lot more. It's a ton of fun if you want a kind of all-inclusive, planned for you tennis experience at the US Open. And then the last one will be in Miami. Registration's not open for that yet. It's going to be on November 14th and 15th. And then I think we're planning a junior clinic on the 13th, the day before that, but TBD on all of that. So if you have any questions about any of those, you can always reach out to me, will@thetennisdrive.com. But let's dive into returns. So the first question is from Mike. It was a very general one. He said, I want to get better at returning serve. So I wanted to start with his question, and I'm actually going to end with his question as well, because this is a very general one. So it's an easy way for me to just talk about my general philosophy on returns and then create a practice plan, which I'll share with you at the end. So the return of serve, it is the most under-practiced shot in tennis, singles or doubles. If you think about when you go play a USTA match or a club match, most of the time, if you watch the courts, they rally from the baseline. They go to the net, they take some volleys, they hit a few overheads, and then they go and serve. They never hit any returns, right? 0 returns during the match warm-up. In private lessons, a lot of times, coaches will have you work on serves at the end for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. But mostly you're working on forehands and backhands and maybe some volleys, but you rarely work on return of serve. In clinics and drills, you're rarely hitting returns of serve. So it's the most under-practiced shot, and it's arguably the most important shot. It might be more important than the serve. I'm not going to dive into that debate right now, but there is a very good argument for that. It's at least the second most important shot in doubles. So one of the things you have to understand when we're talking about the return, though, is it's not the same as a ground stroke, especially at the higher levels. At the lower levels where the pace is slower, it can be very similar to a ground stroke or an approach shot if you have a weak second serve that you're attacking. But at the higher levels, the faster the pace, the return of serve is not the same as a ground stroke. So me, for example, I prefer my forehand ground stroke, but my backhand return is actually better. I'm better at blocking the ball back with my backhand. It's a bit more stable. It's a bit more consistent. So the return and the ground stroke are not the same thing. So if you're hitting a lot of forehands and backhands, or if you're talking about your forehand as a weakness or your backhand as a weakness, you generally want to be more specific than that. What type of forehand, what type of backhand? Is it a return? Is it a ground stroke? And so on. The pace is the thing that makes the return different, right? The pace of the serve, especially at the higher levels, is faster and has a different angle than the pace of a ground stroke coming at you. So that's why the return has to be different than a ground stroke. So we're trying to block it back. We keep a short backswing. One of the biggest mistakes I'll talk about throughout this podcast is players who take big backswings on their returns. That creates a lot of complication and creates room for error. So you want it to be really simple. There's lots of different types of returns you can hit. There's a normal kind of drive return that you're hitting generally back cross court to the server. You can also hit a slice return. A lot of players like to chip and charge. Those players generally move forward and take the ball early. So they're inside the baseline, taking the ball off of or on the rise after the serve is hit. You can hit a lob return. It's one of my favorite tactics. I use it all the time. You can also go down the line, which you can do with a lob. You can drive the ball down the line. There's lots of different targets you can pick out. I'll talk about those throughout this episode. Some of my favorite targets that I like to set up in practice, as well as where I'm thinking about hitting my returns in matches. But the key with this is to work on it, right? Create a plan and practice your returns. They're not going to get better by you just listening to this podcast, right? You've got to take the information I'm giving you and go out to the court and implement it and actually hit a bunch of returns. So that's the key with this. When I had Dan Kiernan on the podcast, the coach of Gabby Dabrowski, he said that the pros, that his teams generally spend around 50% of their practices on serves and returns. 50%. That is such a high number. It's way higher than I practice my serves and returns. But if you're shooting to improve as much as you can, you should probably be close to that number. Now, I think practicing serves and returns is a little bit boring, and I'm not playing for money. So I want them to be good, but I'm not trying to become the absolute best tennis player that I can at the expense of having fun, right? But if you're totally dedicated to improving, then you should probably be close to 50% on serves and returns. So let's move on to Jen's question. Jen said, I would like to be able to consistently return serve and set up my partner. I try a variety of things when I return, lob the net player, drop shot the server, hit up the line, deep cross court return. But I feel like I should probably just be picking one of these sorts of returns and rely on it and get really good at it. I would like to be reliable. I'm often playing an ad, especially when my partner, with my partner who I play with most often. Okay, so Jen is an ad court returner. She wants to be more consistent. So if I had to pick one of these types of returns to get good at, I would just pick the solid cross-court return. That could be with depth. It could be a little bit lower over the net, but just a solid cross-court return. Now, the reason I would pick this, and I wouldn't pick this necessarily at the highest levels of doubles. They kind of have to have all of them, but that's not the first one I would pick for the highest level. But the reason I would pick this for the lower level is twofold. One, most players at the club level do not poach very often. So by just getting a solid cross-court return, you're getting the ball back to the server, which is our second priority as the returner. Priority number one is do not miss the return. Priority number two is avoid the net player. So by getting a solid cross-court return, they're not poaching that often, so you're going to get it back to the server most of the time. So that is really a key to being a good returner. And then number two, if they do poach, they're often not very good at it, right? Poaching is a skill that most club players are not that good at. So if you hit a solid cross-court return and they poach, off of a good return, it's going to be a pretty difficult volley. They probably won't put it away. Maybe they'll pop it up to your partner and your partner can finish the point off. Maybe they'll make a volley error. But most club players are not able to poach and consistently put the ball away. So that's why I say I think a solid cross-court return is probably the best one I would pick. Now, if I can pick a second one, because I want you to have more than one, it would be a solid cross-court return and then a lob return. The lob return will get you a long way, especially against good servers, especially against first serves, especially against aggressive net players who do finish the volleys pretty well. That's going to go a long way in combination with that solid cross-court return. So those are the two I would focus on, Jen. Since you're an ad court player, you can focus on really taking that backhand cross-court. I'm assuming you're right-handed. You can hit your backhand cross-court and try to take it early if you can. This is something I like to do a lot. So even if the player poaches from the ad court, if I can take my backhand return from inside the baseline and hit it early and take it across my body cross-court, even if the player poaches, they often can't get there in time, or they're reaching for a volley and they miss it. Your forehand, you can generally go either direction with from the ad court. a lot of players have a good inside-in forehand. It's great to be able to go all four directions: backhand cross court, backhand line, forehand cross court, forehand line. But those are the places I would start. Really work on that solid backhand cross court return, and then the forehand. Work on taking it through the middle of the court or cross court, and then down the line is kind of a third option. And then if you're going to lob from the ad court, lobbing down the line can be risky because the net player is right-handed, or assuming the net player is right-handed, they're going to have an overhead. So you want to focus on the server's partner's depth. How close to the net are they standing? If they're standing close to the net, you can lob them down the line. If they're standing further back from the net, there's no reason to use the lob return, because if they hit a volley from further back from the net, they're not going to be able to angle it off anyways. They won't be able to put it away as easily. So you can keep that return low, and if they poach, or if you hit your backhand a little late and it goes down the line at them, they're further back from the net, so they're not going to be able to do as much with that volley. So noticing that server's partner's depth is huge in choosing your return tactic. So that's how I would think about creating that reliability, that consistency from the ad court for you, Jen. So next, a question from Doug. Doug wants to improve his backhand returns, both from the deuce and ad court. So this is a really interesting topic because a lot of players, myself included, say they have a good backhand return, right? But from deuce and ad, it's two completely different types of returns. So I was recently watching a YouTube video by Vic Braden that Andy Fitzell, who I had on the podcast a few months ago, sent to me. And I believe I linked to it in the show notes of that episode. So you can go back and find that as well if you'd like. But it's an old video from Vic Braden, who's one of the best tennis coaches of all time. And he is speaking in front of a bunch of mixed players. So it's a bunch of couples and men and women. And he's talking about mixed doubles. And he talks about how a lot of times the guy will say, I'll take the ad court because it's the harder return side. And then Vic goes on to kind of make fun of the guy because in reality, the deuce court is actually the harder return side because the backhand return from the deuce side is very difficult to get cross court, right? You're hitting it inside out. Whereas the backhand return from the ad side is easy to hit cross court because you're hitting it across your body. Again, this is assuming you're right-handed. So the backhand from the deuce is much harder. Typically, it's easier to take that backhand return across your body and go down the line. So that's why me as the net player, when I'm the server's partner, if my partner is serving T on the deuce side, I'm often faking or staying because I think that backhand return is most likely to come down the line at me. So working on that backhand return cross court is something you have to really practice. It's an inside-out return, and you really need great footwork. You have to get your body out of the way and get turned really well to get that ball cross court back to the server, back to where it came from. Otherwise, if you don't have great footwork, if you can't turn out of the way of the ball and create a little bit of space, you're going to almost have to take it across your body, which is down the line at the net player, assuming they're using a regular formation. So another good option for you, Doug, in the deuce court is to use the chip lob with that backhand return. If you can take it early, the net player won't have as much time to back up for an overhead. And then if they're right-handed, you can get it down the line. Around the singles line is where I would aim, maybe just inside the singles line. And you can get it over their backhand side. So even if it's a little short, they have a high backhand overhead, which they're not going to be able to do a whole lot with. But taking it early gets it over their head quicker. And by taking it early, I mean stepping well inside the baseline and taking it as close to the service line as you can. So that chip lob with your backhand from the deuce court is a great shot to have. It's something I use a lot, especially if I see that server's partner playing really close to the net. In the ad court, again, it's much easier to hit your backhand return. So I return from the ad court probably a little bit more often than the deuce court, and I love my backhand return from the ad court because I can just lean on the ball and rip it across my body, back cross court, back to the server, If the net player poaches, it's a difficult volley, and I can get them on defense. So again, taking it early is helpful if you can do that. Keeping your backswing short, split stepping forward, and hitting it back in the direction that it came from. That's the simplest return target. Go back to the server, back to the direction it came from. Changing direction in tennis is a skill that requires a little bit better technique. It's much easier to block a ball back to where it came from. So you want to take it early, hit it back to the server, and you can lob from the ad court as well. Generally, it's going to be better, assuming the net player is right-handed, to lob it back cross court or through the middle of the court. If you lob it down the line against a right-handed player and that lob is short, they're going to have an easy overhead. But again, the depth of the server's partner is going to tell us everything. If they are very close to the net, you can still lob it down the line. But the big thing for you, Doug, is to practice tons of these backhand returns. And I'm going to get into some practice patterns that you can do here in a second. I know you're a Tennis Tribe member, so you'll be able to listen to the rest of this episode. So that's the big takeaway here. For those of you who are listening to the free version of the podcast, you've got to start practicing more returns. And hopefully a lot of what I've said so far has given you some ideas on your positioning in terms of stepping forward, trying to take the return early, and then also studying the server's partner to come up with your return tactics. So you've got to start practicing these more often. So next, let's dive into the member section of the podcast, where I'm going to answer Sandra's question about returning against a variety of serves, including spin serves, flat serves, kick serves, the guy and mixed doubles, and weak serves. Mike's question about cutting down on return errors, and then also a practice plan. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Doubles Only Tennis Podcast. If you're interested in diving deeper into the world of doubles strategy, I've created Tennis Tribe memberships that allow me to bring you more podcast episodes, video lessons, webinars, and other doubles content on a weekly basis without relying on paid ads. The lessons inside the membership will help you better game plan with your partner, optimize your practices, and become the smartest player on the court. Go to thetennistribe.com/memberships to learn more and sign up. You can also join my free newsletter on our homepage, where I share a new doubles lesson every week. If you want to connect, you can find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, or contact me through our website. Thanks again for listening.